Hello and welcome to Hawken Can Survive, and this is the final week of 2018 Shituary. The theme for
Finally,
yes, finally,
this one
the
was kind of rough.
this was a rough week, but I would say had some redeeming factors, particularly at the end. This week we watched bad films by reputable filmmakers, and we so. And these were bad films. These were mostly train wreck films.
Yes, and oftentimes for almost for actually all but one of these, I think, for reasons that could have been avoided, but were mostly out of the director's hands. I mean, these are all films that the directors probably would not like to speak of,
Yes. We'll go
except for
ahead.
the first one.
Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and jump directly into the first one, which is Popeye,
The live-action Robin Williams movie.
directed by Robert Altman, of all people. Now, Robert Altman is one of those filmmakers who is lauded and praised, and I think rightly so. He's made some fantastic films, ranging everywhere from Nashville, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, MASH, the original movie MASH. Just really flexible and talented filmmaker.
Yep.
What happened?
I don't know, because clearly he had his heart in this one. Like, everybody was very passionate about this movie. It just comes together in a really weird way that's not satisfying.
Is it that you just cannot make a live action film out of this material?
Um, you probably could, but I think it again, I said it, everybody tries, but in all the wrong ways. Like, one of the most interesting and striking things about this movie is that it is hell bent. I've never seen anything more committed on making a live action version of a cartoon.
Oh yeah, and they really, you're right. They put everything. I think the only other movie I can think of that tried as hard as this to completely adapt the cartoon was like the Flintstones movie with John Goodman.
Yeah, because I mean, there's even stuff where like, oh, a guy is scared, so he leaps into the arms of the guy next to him, and there's a sound effect for it.
Mhm.
Or a guy gets punted in the face, and he skyrockets up through the balcony and gets stuck in the balcony with his arms pinned to his side. It's uh, the characters have no weight to them physically, and they bounce around like cartoon characters. It's so strange, and it's an interesting stylistic choice that I kind of almost liked, but it's too much.
Yeah. Making things even more cluttered is the fact that they decide to make this film a musical, and they enlisted a person who I would consider to be one of the uh, one of the great songwriters of the '70s, Harry Nilsson, and
It's
he
bad.
he might this film might contain some of. Well, if first of all, it's worth noting that that Popeye, the Popeye soundtrack, was the last studio album he put out in his lifetime.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, as far as I can tell. You know what? Let me double check that. It might be the last soundtrack. No, it was the last thing put out in his lifetime because he put out another album that same year, but this came out last. So
It's a terrible soundtrack. I don't even think I liked a single one of the songs.
no,
I mean
the songwriting is just terrible and lazy.
I and you and I had we were remarking on the fact that we thought Bill Leon liked this movie, and I asked him the other day, and he's like, I kind of like it, but not really. Basically, is what he said. And I mentioned the soundtrack. He said this is his quote. He said it has a couple good songs, but that "He Needs Me" song can fuck right off. Which it can, because and that leads me to Shelley Duvall as Olive Oil,
Oh my.
who is maddening because she is very good in the role, because she is Olive Oil in terms of her performance.
Oh,
And
absolutely. She embodies olive oil, and you know what? I think the determination I made from this watching this movie is I hate olive oil as a character.
Oh yeah, Olive Oil is savagely annoying, even in the cartoon. All she does is squeal and scream and wail and wave her arms around.
Yeah, which in the cartoons, I don't think it ever occurred to me that it was really awful. Probably just because they're so short and you know,
Yeah.
it, but goddamn,
I mean, she doesn't get 4 songs in the cartoon.
this movie is 2 hours long.
Yeah.
2 hours long, and oh my Christ.
You know what's really funny is that "He Needs Me" song is really terrible, but it was adapted in Punch Drunk Love, and it's actually pretty good in that movie.
And it's also, it's probably the most popular song from the soundtrack. And
But the soundtrack sounds like it was written in a week or less.
probably was.
The actual lyrics are incredibly lazy. Like the evil, who's I always forget his name. Who's the evil sailor, the big guy, Bluto? Yeah, he has a song called "I'm Mean," and that's almost the only line. Like I mean, and he sings that like a few times, and the song's over in like a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
While he demolishes the entire set.
Jeez.
There was an amusing level of prop and set breakage in the movie. I'll give it that. And then the spinach stuff at the end was funny, but then the whole baby thing was completely useless. This movie doesn't really have a plot.
No, I mean,
Stuff just kind of happens.
Ostensibly, the plot is at first is that Popeye is looking for his father. Then he finds his father, and then they go looking for treasure, I guess. And
his dad's like kind of evil at first, and then he's not.
Yeah,
I get that right.
Yeah, kind of.
And then like he's hanging out with Bluto, and they're doing evil stuff, and then Bluto ties him up, and then this movie is very, very.
The few
weird
moments in this movie that sort of worked were like the things that felt kind of like comedy sketches. Like the recurring joke of things being taxed, I thought was, silly and kind of funny.
Yeah, that was all right.
Wimpy, when he appeared, he was usually a funny enough character. It's a one joke character. Literally, he will do anything for a burger. That's it. Oh, and he gambles, so he's a 2-joke character. Yeah. And oh god,
I didn't like Popeye. I did not like Robin Williams' performance.
He did the voice pretty well.
The voice was all right. It was a little inconsistent. Like when he started muttering, I thought that was perfect. That sounded exactly like Popeye. But the way he moved was kind of just inconsistent. When he got the character right, he nailed it. But then there were times where you're pulled out of it because like, oh yeah, he's breaking character a little bit. He can't hold the character.
Well,
I don't know if that's just the difficulty of being that character, like holding onto a pipe and muttering and moving your arms like that and keeping an eye shut. It's a lot of stuff to do.
It's got to be painful to keep your eye in your mouth in that constant smirk because Popeye isn't really a character so much as he has a look.
There's a Family Guy cutaway gag where Popeye's at the doctor's office and the doctor's listing off all these things about Popeye's appearance and they're actually medical problems. Like his eye is shut and because he's had a stroke and he talks like that because of the stroke, and then his arms are actually 2 giant tumors. The doctor's like, it's really kind of a medical miracle that you're alive.
Well, that's
But yeah, I don't know. I can't find really anybody to agree with me on the performance of Robin Williams, but it really didn't do it for me.
I will say this: I can't think of any other actor who could do it.
What if Michael Shannon did it?
I was literally about to say Michael Shannon. He wouldn't, is what I would say.
No, but it'd be hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see him try. He might try.
Hopefully not, though. We do not need another live action Popeye movie.
No, this movie was fucking garbage.
Yeah.
And man, Robert Altman, I mean, this movie was a huge failure and an embarrassment for him. And I looking at his filmography as it stands right here, like literally after Popeye came out, he immediately like what I'm just looking. The next film he did after that is a movie I've never even heard of.
Which one?
A movie called Come Back to Five and Dime Jimmy Dean.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a comedy drama from 1982. That's an adaptation of a play. So yeah, he didn't bounce back with that. There's another movie called Streamers, which I've not heard of.
Well, yeah, he kind of fell off the map.
And then a movie called Secret Honor, I've also never heard of. Yeah, like literally after Popeye, it took him a long time to gain back his cred. It must have, because I'm seeing here just okay. So he didn't have a film of note until 1992, The Player.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember A Prairie Home Companion as well.
Right. Well, he made a few.
Yeah.
I mean, The Player is great, and then he did Shortcuts right after that, and Shortcuts is considered one of his classics. Yeah. So.
Oh, and then Dr. T and the Women. I've heard of that one.
Right, and the Gingerbread Man,
which is not the horror film, unfortunately.
The Ginger Dead Man. The Ginger Dead Man versus the Evil Bong.
Yep, those Evil Bong movies were on Hulu for a while, and they're exactly what they sound like.
Waste of time.
No, it's kind of the Dude, Where's My Car subgenre of just savagely dumb humor for no reason, which is great if you're in the right mood for that. But
speaking of savagely dumb for no reason, The 13th Warrior.
I wouldn't even call it savagely dumb. It was savagely boring.
It's so this movie is directed by John McTiernan, who had an epic fall from grace. I mean, he's in jail right now, I believe.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was perjury, lying to an FBI investigator.
Something that is like why you don't talk to cops.
Yeah, I'm actually looking into it.
But and while you're doing that, I'll just mention what I was gonna say about this. Is our planning process for this week.
Also, he got in trouble for taxes too.
Of course, it was taxes. It was our planning process for this. We both heard a lot of really bad things about this movie, so this was one of the final ones we added onto the list, and this is by far the most underwhelming bad movie I would say of the entire month, almost.
Yeah, the problem is, and this is the worst kind of bad movie. It's a bad movie that's not bad for any particularly interesting. Like the background information about how this movie became a failure is far more interesting than the actual movie itself.
Yes.
Now, it's my understanding is it's not 100% John McTiernan's baby, because after apparently Michael Crichton kind of took over direction of the film unofficially, but wasn't able to get a credit out of it. But still,
the credits for Hollywood directors is actually really interesting, and as far as who gets credit, because you have most recently the Star Wars films. Rogue One, Tony Gilroy came in for a lot of heavy reshoots on the movie, but is not credited. And then for Solo, that's not even clear yet whether it'll be Phil Lord and Chris Miller, or whether it'll be Ron Howard that actually gets the final credit, or whether it'll be both.
Right. Well, if the movie ever comes out, we haven't even seen a trailer for it.
They released the logo, which looks literally exactly like you would expect it to.
Yeah. I have this theory that Solo is going to be just a travesty.
It's going to be interesting because Disney is very, very serious about holding on to their release dates that they set for a movie. Like, they do not fuck around. They turned Ant-Man around and got it released on time, and was a very good movie after Edgar Wright left, and they added the other Peyton Reed to direct it. So it's interesting how they really stick to their guns on that. But Ron Howard's a very talented director who can get things done. But I'm like you, I'm getting a little concerned, and I'm at this point less interested in the movie and more interested in how bad the movie's going to be.
Yeah, but you know, the 13th Warrior being as dull as it was, I mean, this is a director who did Predator, who did Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance. He did Hunt for Red October. I'm a defender of The Last Action Hero.
The Last Action Hero is a fun movie.
Yeah, and to come off the heels of movies like that and with just what
there were 2 points in which I was really excited for the 13th Warrior. The first one was kind of like the introduction. I was like, oh fuck yeah, like Viking stuff and awesome shit like that. And then this scene where I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be shit. When the Vikings or the Norsemen or whoever they are, the Norsemen are sharing the bowl of water and washing their face, and after they wash their face, they spit into it, and one guy snorts and blows his nose into it, and Antonio Banderas' character is just sitting there like, what the fuck are these guys doing? And I had that same reaction. I was like, I don't know what's going on, but the whole movie is stupid. I'm gonna eat it up. But it wasn't.
Yeah. The opening I thought was promisingly corny in that Banderas plays a Middle Eastern ambassador who's
already dumb.
Yeah, right. Well, that could have been handled interestingly, but and of course they hired Omar Sharif just so Banderas wouldn't be completely out of place,
Right.
But so he's traveling to parts unknown, and there's some initial fish out of water stuff that was interesting, but you're right. Just like as soon as you start getting the plot, I just tuned out so fast. It was just
it was really hard to pay attention to this movie.
And what really bugs me is it goes into this whole thing of like these monster like characters that had this been like a straightforward historical film with like barbarian hordes fighting each other, that might have been interesting. But the sort of paranormal, or not paranormal, what do you call it?
The movie teases you with like some supernatural horror stuff.
Supernatural, that was the word I was going for. Yeah, but it never really fulfills that either.
Right. So it's doubly bad because not only is it it's not a straightforward barbarian fighting movie until it is. And but at first you want the supernatural horror stuff because that sounds awesome, and then when it's not that, it's not even a good movie with the regular barbarian stuff, and you still wish that it had at least capitalized on all that time it took to make the supernatural stuff. Like when these barbarians, these eaters of the dead, is like, oh, that sounds crazy. I don't know what they are. They're just fucking guys. There's dudes that live like bears, which is stupid.
Right. It kind of reminds me, oddly enough, of the clan of the clan of sort of hyper-human creatures that are featured in Bone Tomahawk, except Bone Tomahawk was sharply directed and written and paced, and this was not.
And Bone Tomahawk does not neuter its villains halfway through. Even if the 13th Warrior had started off by saying these are human beings, they're just crazy and they like to eat people, that would have been better than the intrigue of something a lot more sinister.
Yeah.
I think this would have been a cooler movie if they had what I thought it was, honestly, was something set in the world of Beowulf, but as sort of like a side story.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, well, Beowulf was out doing this thing. These 13 people are also going to fight Grendel and whatever other monsters they find out in the wilderness.
Right.
When they mentioned the fireworm, I was like, oh, right, okay, here we go. But the fireworm is not a supernatural beast that they all get to team up together and fight. It's a group of people carrying torches.
Mm-hmm. So I really have nothing else to say about this movie.
It's a big old boring cock block of a movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, what an Easter egg that this laid. Shit. All right, so the next movie is at least interestingly bad. Accidental Love.
I I got kind of a kick out of Accidental Love.
I Here's the thing about the movie. All of the humor in this film is just completely off balance.
Yes.
The performances are hyper stylized and incredibly over the top. Um, the fact is, this movie was an aborted project because funding kind of caved. The
Right.
movie was
Multiple
being made.
times.
The movie was being made in 2008, and that's excuse me, that's when the bottom fell out in the economy, and unfortunately, that led to this film's destruction. And David O. Russell was really never able to recover it. Eventually, he just kind of stopped caring, and so he's taken his name off the film because what ended up happening was his unfinished, unedited film was purchased, and the person who bought it edited together something somewhat workable.
Edit together what was still there of the movie. Like this is kind of like the Snowman, where the editor had to cobble together what they a full movie of what they could based on the footage they had that they didn't have all of, except that Accidental Love is a more coherent movie than the Snowman.
Also, the title of this movie is terrible. It has nothing to do with the movie. Romance is far from this film's main purpose, and everything about it is made to make it look like that. You know, like all the advertising behind this film was made that this is going to be a romantic comedy. It's a political satire.
Yes.
It's which is a completely different type of film.
Now
And
it's interesting to notice, by the way, that if one were to look up Accidental Love on IMDb, they'll see that the credited director is Stephen Green. And if you were to Google Stephen Green, it actually pulls David O. Russell because that's his pseudonym.
right, sort of like how Neil Young when he directs like documentaries or films, he goes under the name Bernard Shaky.
Yeah.
Stuff
And
like
then
that.
the Coen brothers edit. They edit jointly, but under one name because the Academy Award for editing cannot be given to a pair of people.
Has a Coen Brothers film ever gotten a nomination for editing?
I believe No Country for Old Men did.
I would be so fascinated to have. Yeah. What's who's the name that they use? I forget.
It's oh, I'm trying to remember. It's I can't remember. Roderick James. That's what it was.
That's right.
Which is that is a fake ass name, and I love that nobody really seems to care that they're just doing this.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Roderick James to see if there've been any accolades there, awards. I, or I wonder if they just like straight up don't care and just throw it in the. Yeah, it doesn't look like Roderick James has an IMDb page, unfortunately. uh,
Let's see. I'm looking at this in the. Yeah, I don't know. Something to look at later for sure because I want to say it was nominated for best editing Oscar because that was when I learned about Roderick James being yes. Nominations included best film editing, best cinematography, best sound editing, and best sound mixing as far as the technical awards for No Country for Old Men. It did not win, as far as I know. But yeah, I think that's interesting that that they actually got the nomination as one person.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, like you said, Accidental Love, the humor is so weird. It's a few degrees off kilter, and it has no sense of timing or tempo. Like it sets up jokes because it can't wait to do the punchline, and it's so hard to describe the actual feel of the comedy in the movie because it's bizarre. It's like it's made by an alien.
Yeah, it definitely has that aspect to it. and the
I did
performance.
laugh at the very beginning though when she gets a nail in her head and they go to the hospital and she has no insurance and so the doctors are like, oh well, never mind, and they all start eating hamburgers and they list one of the symptoms of the nail in the head is that your inhibitions go away. And then one of the doctors is like, "Oh, that should help during sex." And then like everybody just guffawing and high fiving. It's a really stupid joke, but I think that the level of commitment that Bill Hader had in that short role was pretty entertaining. I guess we didn't really mention what the movie's about. This Jessica Biel gets shot in the head with a nail gun, and she can't get the nail out, so she goes to Washington because the senator, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, promises to help the people out, and he will help her out with her health care if she will help him out by advocating a moon base, because his boss, played by Catherine Keener, wants a moon base.
Yeah, wants a military base on the moon.
Yes, a military base on the moon that will keep America, quote, safe and not blown up.
Which reminds me of the show, Mr. Show with Bob and David, had the sketch "America Blows Up the Moon," and it's just and it's everyone's just all waiting and ready and like, America's gonna blow up the moon, yeah, blowing up the moon, and everyone's totally in it, and then finally, like this, the monkey they're going to send into space to press the button does hand signals and signs why, and the entire world turns on this monkey, stupid monkey, asking why.
We need another season of Mr. Show.
Yeah.
I as far as pure enjoyment, Accent to Love might have been my favorite or second favorite out of the week because it is such a fascinating failure. Because it has all the ingredients of a David O. Russell film, it just doesn't come together. It's not quite baked David O. Russell, and you can see there's some talent in the way that it's directed, and there's a definite intentional style to the acting. It's just weird.
Right.
I would watch this one again.
Yeah, it's as if they took like. When you say ingredients, it's like they were trying to make an omelet and somehow fucked it up.
Oh, they definitely fucked it up.
Because all the ingredients were there, but none of them fit together. It was something, I have no idea how. It's kind of a miracle. The original title of this film was going to be Nailed.
Right.
And I think is a much more suiting title, but the film has a lot. I mean, there's a wonderful cast here. You've got James Brolin, Jake Gyllenhaal, Catherine Keener, Tracy Morgan, who goes a little overboard in the film and has absolutely no purpose in the plot. But whatever.
Paul Rubin, kind of a villain, I guess.
Yeah. Kurt Fuller shows up for some reason.
Tracy Morgan.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the sequence where she gets shot in the head with the nail gun. They never actually shot that scene, so what you see in the film is kind of a sort of a CG cover-up job.
Yeah, it's interesting how that came together, and it looks strange, but they somehow sort of made it work.
It looks very fake, but it's convincing enough, I suppose, in respect to the rest of the film. The whole thing just kind of has this way about it that doesn't look like it's quite there.
Right.
And then we mentioned the acting too. The acting is just bizarre, especially Jessica Biel. It's manic. Like this whole movie is just manic in a very, very weird way. Like it just moves at at a very quick pace, but like it's limping. I'm trying to equate the feel of this film to actual real analogies, but it's kind of impossible because this is such a strange beast of a film.
I would say everyone in this film acts like they are on a friggin' coke bender.
Yes, especially Jake Gyllenhaal and Jessica Biel.
Yeah, their eyes are just like pushing so far out of their face, you feel like they're gonna pop.
Yes.
And it's crazy. There's just so I found the movie off-putting. It had some moments that made me laugh, but in general, it was just so it felt like a Frankenstein's monster or something.
It doesn't feel right, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Frankenstein's, I think, a good comparison, because literally, you have the pieces that make a human, but then when it came together, it was assembled by an abnormal brain, so to speak.
Yes.
Abby somewhat.
But I would I would definitely rewatch it, despite that, because it's an interesting example. I think it's one of the most interesting ones of a movie that gets way out of control of the director's hands. Besides our next one, but
it's worth noting that 3 of the 4 films on our list this week are films that were taken out of the director's hands.
I think Accidental Love is a little bit different in that respect, because it wasn't forcibly taken from him. It's just the thing just flew so far out of control that he abandoned it. Mm-hmm. As someone joked online, David O. Russell said, "Fuck this! I'm going to go reinvent myself and be a 3-time Oscar-winning director now."
Yeah,
which he did. He turned right around and made some really good movies, like one right after the other. Mm-hmm. So that's about all I have to say about that one.
Deadly Friend is Wes Craven's entry to this film list, and it's first of all a tonal nightmare, just
yes,
all over the place, and for interesting reasons. So it turns out this film, as it was originally filmed, this movie was supposed to be a sort of PG-ish, sort of family friendly, but with dark elements. Kind of a fairy tale about a guy and his unusual relationship with this girl who dies, and he brings her back, and sort of a modern day Frankenstein fairy tale.
Yeah, he was saying that as far no gore or anything, with the most interesting aspect being that this girl got brought back to life, and that's kind of scary, but more horrifying are the adults in the film. Like, these adults are monsters living in human skin, metaphorically, and that just human beings that are what society expects them to be are far more frightening than any monster in this movie.
But after test audiences were negative, the studios looked at Wes Craven's history as a filmmaker and said, you know what? This guy does gore, so why don't we insert gore scenes? One of the edicts they gave Wes Craven was he had to insert at least 6 gory scenes of increasing velocity in each scene.
To be fair, he tackles that request very admirably.
Oh yeah, well, those individual moments are amazing gore moments, and if you're a gore hound, they are certainly worth looking up.
Oh yeah, the first dream sequence was very extreme. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then it was a dream. But man, you don't really do gore like Wes Craven can do it.
You're right. The most famous scene in the movie is that of the basketball, but there's a scene in which someone's head is basically exploded by a basketball, which, by the way, I don't think that there's any way that could possibly happen.
Well, since the girl is just a human, that's the weird thing, is that the girl, this kid's robot dies, and then his girlfriend dies, and then he uses the robot's brain to resurrect the girl. Which one thing about this, well, I'll talk about that in a second, but you would think that for her to be that strong, she'd have to have a robot body. But no, she just has a robot head and a human's body. But no human can throw a basketball hard enough to splatter somebody's head across the wall.
Of course, the final shot of the film does explain why she was suddenly super strong, but it doesn't make sense. No. It insinuates that somehow having a microchip put in her brain turned her into a robot.
Yeah.
Just like body
Um,
and
I laughed at the sequence where they're going to save the girlfriend's life. She's on life support at the hospital, and the doctor's like, "All right, we're going to keep her on life support for 24 hours to see if anything happens, but it's really just a formality, and we're going to have to pull the plug." And then in that scene where they're going to save her from the hospital, there are no fewer than like 4 doctors standing around checking their watches for the 24-hour mark to the second to pull the plug on her.
yeah.
I was like, that is an awful way to manufacture tension for that scene. Um, and it's the movie is just it's got a lot of awful characters as well. Like I struggle to think how this would have been good even in its original form.
One thing that the review in the All Movie Guide says that I think makes a lot of sense is that this is sort of a cross between Frankenstein and an after school special and Reanimator.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair comparison because when you say after school special, like any of those 80s PSA kind of short films that they used to show you in school that are just corny as hell. It seems like, that's where the acting comes from in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got kind of that it's got kind of a Goosebumps feel to it. The kids, and I hate all the characters in this movie too because they're all badly written and shitty people, and the main character likes this girl, but his friend does too, but he gets to her first, and then the robot dies, and then the main character talks to his friend, and he guilts him into helping him resurrect the girlfriend, being like, "Hey, you said so yourself. It's your fault that BB died, so help me out."
Jeez.
And so then they poison his mother to put her to sleep, and then there's a scene where they think that she's dead because they gave her too much of the sleeping powder in her coffee, which that would have been awesome if she just died, and they fucked that up. And that would have been, I think, a better movie is if this kid, everyone around him dies because he keeps fucking up through his selfish shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know how it would end. Maybe he turns into a robot or something. But anyway, there's a lot of ways that this movie could have been better. And I think this is the one where I am the least interested in the original concept, and that I can't see it being all these other movies. I could see them being way better had things not gone wrong during production. But I don't think the original PG vision for this movie would have been a good movie at all.
Yeah, no, I don't think it would have been either. I think the original PG vision, maybe it would have been more consistent, but I think the gore scenes save this movie and make it at least entertaining.
Yes, I would agree. Like the gore was really great,
and something about the tonal shifts of it being, relatively family friendly, and then suddenly, oh my god,
yes,
I dig that. It makes the film hilarious.
It does, because those gore scenes are very extreme and very alarming. A couple of the nightmare sequences actually had pretty decent jump scares.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, oh, it's everything's, this movie's, and then like, oh my fucking gosh, there's a burning person underneath the bed. And
not just underneath, but in the bed.
Inside the bed, yes.
Yes. Oh boy. And
the final song in the end credits.
Oh god, that song. Oh man.
It's just the BB's name of the robot, and it's just the words BB over and over again with a very try hard John Carpenter-esque synth song.
It's worth noting that the robot BB in this film is voiced by Charles Fleischer, also known as the voice of Roger Rabbit.
I did not know that, but that's hilarious.
Yeah.
It was a real robot too.
Yeah, well,
Wes Craven paid a robotics company $20,000 to make this robot that was in 20 minutes of movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's $1,000 per minute of film that this robot was in.
Right, and it's it's super cartoonish, and so of course it makes sense that you would bring in someone like Charles Fleischer, who does so many voices himself. to do that. He, I, I just this movie is it's goddamn crazy.
I feel out of all these films, I feel the worst for Wes Craven because despite the fact that I don't agree that his original vision would have been good, this was clearly a vision that he was really passionate about. And then, this is his first tentpole studio film as well. Mm-hmm. And, he's a fresh director. He made some really good movies. He's very acclaimed, and he's trying this new concept. And the studio's like, you know what? You don't get to do that because we're going to mandate that you do these things instead. So he, against his will, had to make a completely different type of movie, which he, the gore scene is good. The gore scenes are good enough that you can tell that he committed to it. He's like, he made sure he did a job well done, but he didn't get to make his original movie, which is kind of sad. He said at one point there were 20 different producers, and every single one of them had a different vision for what they wanted the movie to be.
Right.
And I can't even imagine, like, I would love to direct a movie or be involved in the film industry somehow. But I can't imagine the disappointment of having a movie and getting it made and having all the actors and just being in control of this film that you're making, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and changes your vision for you. Too bad for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine the disappointment of losing that creative control over a vision that I brought from page to screen.
It's one of those things where there are some tragedies in film like that, and Terry Gilliam's Brazil almost became a tragedy when the film studio wanted to cut it down to 90 minutes and change the ending, and he fought his ass off against it. And you can't always do that. If you may just plain need the money as a director.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's not an option. And that's where you have those compromises that need to be made. I think Ridley Scott is one of the strangest directors who's gotten around that by he lets the studio release whatever cut they want theatrically, and then he just releases director's cuts of them afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Which in some cases, like, I would argue the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is a vast improvement over the original. It's still not great, but it makes the movie kind of decent.
Yeah. And I don't care for Kingdom of Heaven much at all, but I agree that the director's cut is superior.
Mm-hmm.
It's baffling that studios continue to think that they have the superior opinion on a director's film. I'm hard pressed to think of well, off the top of my head, a single one movie that the studio was right in terms of what they decided, the decisions they made to override the director. But I doubt there's more than 5.
Kevin Smith's Clerks. They told him to cut the ending where Dante gets killed. And
yeah, he gets killed by the guy robbing the convenience store. That's true, although I think that would have been an interesting choice if the movie had gone ahead and done that.
Well, the thing is, I think that ending was a legacy left over from one of the earlier drafts of Clerks, mm-hmm. which one of the earlier drafts of Clerks was actually a much darker, almost David Lynchian script about working in a convenience store called Inconvenience.
Okay.
And it was like a much more kind of disturbing and dark look at life in a convenience store. Now, I haven't read the script. I'm just going on what I've heard. But from what I also have heard is it was a good thing that it became a comedy, because apparently the original, the earlier drafts of the script were not as good. So he clearly found his strength.
Good. Yeah, Clerks is a great movie, and I think Clerks 2 is almost better. But
I would agree. Clerks 2 is a good movie too. And
I wish that apparently Kevin Smith has written, or at the very least started, a Clerks 3, but he's making all these stupid ass body horror movies instead.
He's too busy smoking pot.
He's way too busy smoking pot and talking about Star Wars. I mean, I think Kevin Smith is a very gracious person. I think he's a really cool guy, but he needs to stop promising these projects and then not delivering on them. He's like, oh, I wrote the script for. It's a difference between him and Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro is like, I would love to make a darker version of the Haunted Mansion, and then later you find out, well, they're not going to let me do that. And then Guillermo del Toro says, I would love to do in the Mountains of Madness something Cthulhu or cosmic horror. And then you find out later, it's like, oh, well, yeah, well, the studio's not going to give him $150 million for an R-rated horror film. Then Kevin Smith is just saying, oh, I wrote a script for Clerks 3, and then makes fucking the Moose movie or whatever it's gonna. There's like a Moose movie coming out or something like that.
Yeah, Moose Jaws,
Moose
which is
Jaws.
described literally as Jaws with a moose.
I think he's fucking with us.
Well, yeah, but here's the worst part: it's set in the same universe as fucking Tusk and, even worse, Yoga Hosers.
Oh God. Someone last year was, they were I put Yoga Hosers as my number 2 worst movie of the year, something like that, and somebody's like, "Oh, don't be mean. He made it for his daughters." I said, "Fuck that. He could have made a good movie for his daughters."
Yeah, or he could have not made a movie for his daughters and instead made, a good movie that just happened to appeal to, it's just
or put his daughters in, a tame non-R-rated sequence of Clerks. Have them have a scene on their own. They're at school or something. It doesn't have to be graphic or anything because he made the movie Saline for the sake of his young daughters and for Johnny Depp's daughter. I say daughters, but he only has the one, I think. Mm-hmm. It's just such a bad argument. But well, can you think of any other movies where the studio was right in terms of the decisions they made to override the director?
That's a tough one.
Because sometimes if it did work out, you don't really know about it because if a movie ends up being good, you don't know who's responsible for that. Like people say that Rogue One was far out of control with Gareth Evans. The scope of the project was far beyond what he was able to do as a director, and the reason the movie is fine, or at least it's good in my opinion, was because Disney stepped in and said, "Okay, calm down. We're going to take over for you for a little bit."
You know what? I've actually got one for you.
Go ahead.
Steven Spielberg's 1941.
Okay. Which is that was one of the movies that was on the list of bad movies that was considered for this episode or for this week.
Well, we wouldn't have done it because I've actually seen it many times before. So here's the thing. 1941 in the theatrical cut and the cut that was widely distributed on film has several completely different scenes than the director's cut. And in addition to that, the pacing is, because the director's cut is slightly longer, and the pacing is thrown off. The original, like the theatrical cut of 1941, in my opinion, is a solid comedy. It's not great. It's nothing transcendent, but as like if you're looking for a goofy take on, the paranoia that occurred at the beginning of the Second World War, it's a solid movie. But the director's cut fucks that up. It makes it so much worse.
And I have not seen 1941.
Oh, really? Never?
No.
Okay. Yeah. It's like I said, it's not a great movie. It's not going to win any awards. It never did. But yeah, I'm just reading here so Wikipedia says here the film was originally previewed in a 2.5-hour version. Columbia and Universal both had major problems with it. The theatrical release was cut down to under 2 hours against Spielberg's wishes. And after the success of the Close Encounters special edition, Spielberg was given permission to make his own cut. And yeah, so I have I actually, here's the thing about the movie. I used to watch it a lot when it was shown on TV. The version that was shown on TV at the time was the theatrical cut. I was like, I bought the DVD of 1941, and I watched it once, and I thought, this is terrible. What the fuck is wrong with me? I watched again, and it was still terrible. And then it came on TV and I watched it. I was like, this is there are completely different scenes here.
Yeah.
And the extended version of the film is awful. Now, apparently, in 2014, the Blu-ray of the movie included both versions. Ooh, I might actually have to pick that up. Because there are some memorable comedic sequences in that film, and the cast, I mean, it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I didn't even know it was a comedy. Honestly, I thought it was like another war drama.
Wait, you thought 1941 was a war drama?
Yeah, I know nothing about it. I saw it on the list, and the pictures of a guy wearing a pilot's hat with a cigar. I was like, okay, I guess that's
that guy is John Belushi.
That's right. I forgot his name for a second, but yeah, I know literally nothing about 1941, so I'll have to watch it.
Okay, try your best to find the theatrical cut. The director's cut is just shit.
Okay.
All right, so that's this brings an end to our episode of to Shituary. We will occasionally come back with some more Hawking Ken Survives episodes here and
there. I did want to do a brief closing, thing on the entire month if you wanted.
Oh, okay, sure.
Just a little bit of a reflection, because I was actually very excited for this month to do this, and I actually told a lot of my friends, what we were watching, and I got a few people to watch Abraxas, which is story. I bought Abraxas last week when we recorded the episode for the wrestlers. As we were recording, I purchased Abraxas on DVD from Amazon. Unfortunately, the DVD arrived damaged, so I got to find a printer and print a release return label and ship it back and order a new one. But it was only $7, and that's totally worth $7 to own that movie.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Do you remember what our categories were last year? We had the Buddies movies.
We had Tyler Perry's Madea movies.
Oh yeah, Madea. I forgot about that. We had was it Uwe Boll or was it video game movies?
Uwe Boll.
Okay, and then it was. I can't remember what the last category was.
Yeah, nor can I.
But I think that this year was a lot more fun because those Madea movies were just miserable. Like,
yeah.
Medea's Witness Protection was just fucking garbage. It's such an awful film.
Yeah, it's this. We did better this year, I think. Probably because we made smarter choices in general. Because if you're setting out to fail, if you're looking for gold in the hills of Tyler Perry.
Oh, shame on us. One of the categories was Len Kabaczynski movies. How did we forget that?
Shit. Well, wait. We did we did Len Kabaczynski later in the year.
Oh yeah, no. The other, let's see. I pulled up our website. I pulled up Movie Boozer and looked at what we had. Films of aging action stars.
There we go.
Because we had a Dolph Lundgren movie. That shark one.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we did do Len Kabaczynski later, but that was memorably fun. Yes, like you said, we set out to fail if we're just doing bad movies. So I think we took the right approach this time by picking out some categories that had the potential to be entertaining or at the very least interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One of my suggestions was Prince movies, like The Princess Bride and The Prince and Me.
Oh God,
got that one down pretty quickly, and I'm kind of glad you did because I'm not sure if I would have survived that.
Yeah, if we did Prince movies, it'd be a week of watching movies starring Prince. Spoiler alert:
Are there even 5 of those?
Cherry Moon is insufferable. Graffiti Bridge is even worse. Yes, I've seen these.
So what would you say was one of your favorite movies out of the entire month?
Well, Deadly Friend is up there. That was wonderfully garbage. Abraxas, definitely. I had a lot of fun with Santo and the Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman. Uh,
I our week was our month was backloaded with the fun categories. I think.
I as far as like Animals Week, fucking Pup Star 2 was so bad, and yet
Yes.
it was so insufferably bad in a way that I enjoyed the experience watching it, because it was just shocking how many new things they found to make terrible.
And they're making a third one this year, I think.
Yes, they are.
So
Ugh, yes,
God
they
bless
are.
Robert Vince for sure. Abraxas, I thought was way up there in terms of the really fun movies. I would say Abraxas was probably my favorite.
Hmm.
I also got a huge kick out of River of Darkness.
Yes.
Um, Ratatouille, I laughed quite a few times because it was so stupid.
Oh, Leo the Lion. Holy
Leo the
shit.
Lion, was fascinatingly terrible.
I think I
And
lost it, and that I'm a vegetarian song at the very end. I I I, I just blanked out. My mind and I my sanity just disappeared.
yes, there were some really fun ones this time. I think for next year, it
Hmm.
might be fun to kind of come up with some ideas throughout the year if we come across one or have a revelation, or even to solicit suggestions from viewers or the rest of the writing staff.
Certainly, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I mean, we'll have the final say. We can't. Somebody can't say, "Aha, you're going to do Barbie movies" or something like that. I mean, we can veto ideas, but
Hmm.
I think somebody is going to have a really clever idea for Shituary 2019.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yes, but until the next time,
Yes, we will. We will see you next time, and we will. We have some ideas for the near future that we'll be jumping into. So, uh, uh, awkward pause. Bye.